Hello, hello, super expanders. How are you doing? I hope that you are having an amazing day wherever you are listening and listening in and catching this episode. You are in for such a treat. I have just the most amazing woman who is sitting here with me today. And I'll give you a little bit of context before I introduce you. So we're like new friends. And when I was introduced to her, I just knew that I had to share her with you, but also I knew she's such a spitfire, passionate woman. And I can't even. So I'll stop throwing these accolades at you and I will let you actually meet Kat McDavitt.
Thank you, Corey. I am often called a spitfire, and I personally am always like a little shocked when people say that, but it happens so much that it might be like, that story when if someone just keeps calling you an asshole, you might actually be an asshole. So this might actually, maybe I am a spitfire.
But a spitfire is a good thing. At least is that a negative thing?
No.
I hope it's not. Gosh,
I don't think
if it is, I'm sorry. That's not what I would.
Well,
ever.
if it is a negative thing, I'm called it so often that I should just accept it in whatever form it is. So
I think it's like a compliment because, and it's funny. So I don't plan these introductions, right? It just comes out of like exactly how I feel about the person that I'm sitting with. And that's truly when I first met you, I was like, oh my gosh, she has got a fire in her belly and a passion in her heart. And this woman she's doing some serious things in this world. So I was super excited.
I have big feelings about a lot of things.
And I love it. And that's why I knew, I was like, oh, I like this woman. We need to be friends and I need to share her. You're like, oh no, I didn't sign up for this friendship.
I'm in for the ride.
So we share a mutual friend, Ryan, and that was the glue that brought us together. And I adore her. So I'm really excited to be able to have this conversation with you. And of course, I was giving a little bit of background before I hit record. So she knows I'm going deep, guys. And you guys know that this is where we go straight off the bat. But can you share with us exactly in the core of your being, who is Kat?
I know you made me a little nervous when you gave me a preview on that question a few minutes ago. I was like, shit, who is Kat? But no, honestly, I think at the core, I'm someone who just really wants to do something big, right? And I have a massive inferiority complex. So you pair those two things together, and I think you get like a very high energy driven person who is constantly worried about failure, right? So like I'm just constantly running, always running, trying to do amazing things. And sometimes that's a really great and productive thing. And sometimes it's really quite terrible personally and professionally. Yeah, so yeah.
We have to dance with our polarities, right? You have to be able to dance. So if the running from the failure is creating what you are doing in this world, which she's doing big things, friends. She's doing big things. So if that is what fuels you, then I say, while I'm always down for all of the healing, I also think that we have to have something that fuels us really in a big way. And I mean, you kind of just described it.
Failure, it's one form of rocket fuel, right?
It absolutely is. We're either running from pain or running towards pleasure. So, or maybe a little bit of both.
Yeah, I'd like to think there's both involved, but I think definitely the running from is definitely a thing. Constantly looking over my shoulder, for sure. But yeah, I in general have big feelings too, right? I've always been told I kind of have a high energy situation going on, but yeah, I think that both the wanting to be able to say I did something good in the world, and not wanting anyone to have ever been right about me not being good enough definitely drives me.
Oh, I feel like we can even break that down a little bit. That's not really a fear of failure. That is a deep desire to win. And now you're speaking my language.
That's true, right? There's fear of failure, right? Sure. But yeah, I definitely, I don't even know where this came from in my life. I grew up, like I had like an amazing childhood, right? It wasn't anything like that, but I think I've always been worried that I can't do something. And so I continuously take on projects, like almost proving that I can, which is how I now, run a consulting practice and have a nonprofit.
All the things.
Whatever the hell else, So yeah, that's just what happens.
So
yeah.
I think you just touched on something that I think is huge in terms of people who are doing big things, high performers, that there's a differentiating piece there, because you could have that fear of not being able to do something and then actually not do anything. Or you can have that fear of failure and not being able to do something and deciding that you're going to dive all in and just do the darn thing, which is what you consistently do on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think there's also some defense mechanisms that I've built into that too, where like I've already seen my failure when I take things on. Like I've already thought this is how bad it could be, right? And then so once, if something doesn't really go my way, or like, I've already imagined the 10,000 scenarios in which I will fail, right? And so if one of those happens, like I've already got it, like I've already figured out how I'm going to move forward. And then the other thing that I think has been helpful, perhaps not like super healthy, is whenever I encounter something that didn't go well or whatever, I'll call my parents, right? As one does. And my dad is like, there's some quote from like some John Wayne old timey Western movie. And he's going to be mad that I don't remember what it is. And he's always like, Catherine, looking back is a bad idea. Or like something like that. So I'm always like, all right, just got to be moving forward at all times, right?
Oh my gosh, I hope he says it with that like sort of mystery to it. Looking back is a bad idea.
Yeah, maybe it's a bad habit. I can't remember. He's gonna be mad that I screwed it up. But yeah. He does kind of say it like that.
I love that. I feel like, can I have your dad's phone number for the next time I encounter?
I say like, I wouldn't call them the most amazing pep talks ever, but it's more like you just need to get your ass up and move forward, right?
I don't know. I mean, sometimes that's the kind of pep talk we all need, right?
Yeah. I respond better to those kinds of pep talks, right? So yeah,
rather than it's going to be okay. Yeah, no, I'm with you.
Because sometimes it's not going to be okay, right? Sometimes it's not going to be okay unless you actually do the following things, right?
Yeah,
so
you have to
might as well get started.
Make it so, right? You have to make it so. Okay, so there was the big reveal, right? You just said a few moments ago, you have a nonprofit and you run your own company.
Yes. Well, I now have a business partner, right? So I run a practice within that consulting firm, but yeah.
I mean, okay.
It's pretty cool.
You have help, but still.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little bit. It's sometimes it's, I'm sure everyone is like me and wakes up at 3 a.m. and thinks about all the things that are stressing them out, right? And does math in their head and it's like not productive. But sometimes I lay there at 3 a.m. thinking, oh, why did I do that? But during the daytime, I feel pretty great about it all.
Yeah, it's those things you just like throw yourself into it. I feel that one to my core. Many a times you're made the commitment to do something and you're like, that really seemed like an amazing idea when I made that big commitment. And now I'm let everybody know that I'm doing this big thing.
Yeah.
I guess I have to keep going.
And the one of the things that I think is the scariest about all of that is just like, everybody knows you're doing it, right? Everybody's watching. So back to the whole inferiority complex thing. But then once you start hiring people on, right? Like people's entire family lives are connected to your success, right? Just kind of keeps piling on. That's something that I always stress about too. Like, you don't want to make the wrong move.
Oh my goodness. But you know what? There are no wrong moves because we just get to pivot no matter
That's
what.
right. And looking back is a bad habit, right? So,
There you go. All right. I think we are done here.
The end.
The end. Exactly. Okay. So you have a company in Innsena. I want to make sure I say Innsena. I always want to say with like the wrong inflection there.
Oh, but I know everyone does. So much for it originally being a marketing agency, right? And naming my own company to something that people can't say, right? Yeah.
No, you can say it. This is just me. I just want to make sure I have a fear of saying names. I'll just put this out there. And I have a fear of saying it wrong, which is, as we're talking about fears, I'll share mine and I don't want to say it wrong. So then as soon as I start to say it, I'm like, oh God, I think I'm saying it wrong.
I know. No, you're totally good. Yeah, it's Innsena.
So Innsena, let's talk about that for a minute. So you have a business partner, you're in the midst of growing this company. And so tell us about the company, and when was the moment inside that you're like, I should also start a nonprofit?
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit of a journey. Yeah, I'll try to condense it into something that is gonna keep everyone's attention. Because it could be long. But yeah, so I've always been a consultant, right? And when you're a consultant working for a consultancy, kind of your big step is to have your own, right? So I did that, and then my business partner, who's actually now the CEO of the company, we worked together previously, and we were both kind of on our own, and we're doing stuff. And so I founded it. I was the CEO, and then I fell in love with one of my clients. I know. And so I sold it to her. And I went and I took this big time hot shit startup job. I was in the C-suite, and I did a lot of not just marketing, because Innsena is originally just a marketing and communications agency. So I was the CMO, and then I also took on a lot of policy work. So government as a customer, how do you go to market? Blah blah blah, boring corporate speak. But we had a great exit about a year ago. And then, so that was a great, lovely experience, and gave me the means to do some things, right? And so I ended up coming back to Innsena and started a new practice there, kind of bought back into the agency, started a practice that was focused on just that, the combination of marketing, go to market, and then government as customer, policy, and things like that. So like kind of rapidly built a practice, just because I had a reputation at that point for doing things. It's kind of like whale in a glass of water, right? a lot of people knew me, but it's not a really big world. So pretty successful, and that was cool. But as part of that, I mean, honestly, Corey, I think that was such a bender working at that startup, right? It was like so intense. I mean, I work a lot in general, but there was, again, the feel of failure here. Like, I sold my agency to be there, right? I did not have a backup if it failed. And so I kind of put my whole universe into making that a successful endeavor as much as I could as one contributor and part of that team. And so when it sold, it was kind of like, it was over, right? Like, and so like, I really kind of went through quite a mental space there for a while, where I really didn't know what I wanted or what I wanted to do. And so, but I did know, as always, I wanted to do something really good. And I, fortunately, because of that exit, had the means to do something good. So I started the Mothers in Medicine Fund, which, like, a very simple concept, right? It's focused on my industry, the healthcare industry. And it was, obviously, we're still in a pandemic, but then we didn't even have vaccines yet, right? It was right when things were really rolling out. And you saw all these clinician moms, like, the videos leaving their kids in other people's houses for months while they went to work, so they didn't give their kid COVID, right? And there was really no support for any of these women working on the front line in terms of childcare, right? That just never really came through in any of the relief packages. So what the Mothers in Medicine Fund does is it gives out flat grants to clinician moms. It's first come, first serve. And it pays for about a month. We kind of average it out across the country of childcare. And they're cash grants, right? It's nothing like, no one has to write me a freaking essay about why they deserve this, right? Like, we all know they need it. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so it was just kind of like a really good thing that I could get done really well. It's direct action. It's something that can immediately help, or at least I feel like immediately helps a lot of moms who are in a tough place doing good stuff. So there's that. We have our parent foundation is the Zorya Foundation, which works on opportunities for a lot of different healthcare initiatives for women in a lot of different positions, so both corporate and clinical. But yeah, that's what's going on. So it's been a labor of love. I didn't know that it was going to be more than me just sending out money, like my own money, and it turns out I like just kind of go on these random social media events and ask people for money on LinkedIn and Twitter. And it turns out people actually donated, right? like what? So they, like, all of a sudden people actually started like sending us some money, right? So we got donations in, and it's now become like an actual thing that we still get most of our donations just from social media, just from asking people to help at certain times of the year. And yeah, so yeah, now we have a thing. And the reason we now have our umbrella company, Zorya Foundation, which is, also my thing, but is so that we can have funds that are focused on different areas of the healthcare sector to be helpful. So yeah, it's been fun. I have no idea what I'm doing. I listen to podcasts in the morning while I'm working out. That I type in the search bar how to run a nonprofit. And listen, Corey, like I am a for-profit kind of girl, right? Like this is not an area I know. Like the idea of like nonprofit, like not really my jam. So I'm learning a lot. And back to the whole fear of failure. I'm like, I better really figure this out. Right.
So inside of just the most amazing story, you have shared so much gold. One is when you were in the startup phase with that company, something that I think is so important. So many people leave, I guess, one foot out the door. They leave a safety net. And I have to assume a big portion of that kind of success outside of your skill and your talent and your wisdom and all of the things and the energy and all the things that you bring to it. The aspect of going all in is so, so important.
It is important, and it's so scary too. Like I'll say, like my actions were very much all in, right? I worked all the time. I took on, I built a whole like government relations team. We didn't even have that, right? Like I did a lot of really hard things there, and I worked really, really hard, and I really did believe. But I will say, in my mind, probably as a defense mechanism, like I was always thinking about, like, again, if this goes bad, what am I going to do, right? So like, I would bet you the CEO of that company would say, she was always one foot out the door, right? She was always thinking about what she was going to do. But it's like that's unfortunately one of my bad habits. I think is constantly.
Or it might just be that's that's like a cat, how you have cat-like reflexes too.
Maybe I don't know.
So something else that you said when you were talking just now, actually, and in the growth of your nonprofit, is that you don't know what you're doing, right? None of us do, but the defining difference, I think, about people who do big things and create big success is that is not a limiting factor, right? Because we get to do things, we get to do them over if it's not exactly how it's supposed to be, but you can also seek outside answers, whether that's from Google, which that's pretty much how I live my life. I'm like Google, and I Google all the answers, and then and you filter through.
You can Google a lot of answers. Right? It is true.
Google the answers, and in the search bar of the podcast, how to run a nonprofit. I've definitely been there, not Googling how to run a nonprofit, but how to do the thing, how to do the thing.
Right. Well, it's funny. Like with just figuring it out, like I feel like there's a certain group of the population that really can figure that out. Like they can do all those things. They can take on hard things and just learn. Obviously it's cool if you're an expert too. Like that's totally great. That's one of the reasons I think our consultancy, our for-profit consultancy is successful, right? Because both me and Leslie, my business partner, this is what we grew up doing, right? We know how to be consultants. We know how to set hourly rates. We know how to do margins, right? We understand client services, but on the other side of that, I think a lot of what I experienced at this startup, right, where there was so much new stuff going on that I had to figure out was that if you have a big problem, you can kind of stare at it and be like, oh shit, that is a big problem. I'm just going to stare at it, right? And I'm going to be freaked out and stress the hell out. But you can take, like, I think how I address big problems like that, and it's kind of the same thing with the Zorya Foundation and the Mothers in Medicine Fund, is just, people do this all the time, right? Like opening up a company. I remember thinking that was going to be really hard. And it's not, right? The government actually makes it quite easy to set up an LLC or lots of different types of business structures, right? And you kind of have to Google it and just figure it out, right? And just do it. And as you do it, you figure out, oh, this isn't so bad. And I can do this. And the other thing that I've learned, and I was thinking about this. So I did your breathwork session, right? And just thinking about, how I tackle these big challenges and these ridiculous goals I've set for myself that I always stress about. And like, it's all about people, right? If you're a good person and you want to do cool stuff and you help people out, like people will help you out too. And the amount of advice I've gotten, like free consulting advice that I definitely should have paid people for about like what to do with a nonprofit, how to do it, what things I'm going to run into. It's been incredible, right? And these are people that just come out of the woodwork, or they're people who I didn't know had that expertise. And so I think surrounding yourself with good people and just like not being an asshole, it's pretty key.
Yeah. All all the, all the secrets to life
Am I
right
allowed to
there.
curse on this? I'm sorry. I sometimes
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
it.
You
All right.
can drop, you want to drop, you can drop the F-bomb now too. If you want.
Oh, fantastic. Well, that might come too.
So before I ask you the big question, I'd love to hear even just like a little story of someone inside of the nonprofit, the Moms in Medicine, how this has really shifted their life. Because I feel like there's endless stories, but I feel like at least sharing one to just let everybody know how this passion project of yours essentially has taken on such a massive life of its own, and it's doing so much good in the world.
Yeah, so I'll say this beforehand. So I have a few published videos of moms who have come forward and said they wanted to talk about their experience. But we tell any applicant, any grantee that we will absolutely keep their information confidential, right? We would never share their story without their permission. So the ones that I'm sharing are ones that like we have gotten permission for, but one was for we sent out a grant to a respiratory therapist in rural area of the Southeast, a critical access hospital. And she kind of reached out and, I would say at first, Corey, we didn't really have like a super like high-end professional situation going on, right? We were kind of like Venmoing people that $1,000, right? So it was a little weird when we reach out and we didn't have emails set up, right? So we were emailing from, our private emails and things like that. So I remember she was a little bit like, huh? And and then it all worked out. The money actually did go to her bank account. It was used, it wasn't a scam.
Yeah,
And,
she's like, oh no, is this one of those cash app scams?
She's like, I just want to talk to you about this. And she was saying, it was the pandemic. Her husband had lost his job. They were trying to do some different things with the school at home, right? Homeschooling. Well, my brain is so fried from homeschooling still, I can't remember what it's called. And she was really struggling to make ends meet, right? Had a younger child at home who did need to go to daycare. And she was like, just that, like the 1 month off from having to take care of this massive amount of money that I have to send for daycare. I mean, we all know, like we say it's $1,000 here. Like I paid, an outrageous amount of money for, consistent, reliable daycare here. So, it's a good chunk of money, but it's probably not enough to cover in many parts of the country. And her story was just that, hey, I was able to like not have to work so many additional hours that month that I could spend some time with my older son who really needed help studying and was struggling from the social isolation. It gave her husband a little bit of a break, and he was able to kind of restart a business and make ends meet that way. So, you can't say it definitely didn't change anyone's lives, right? It's a month off from finding that money, but it gave her enough of a platform to start moving forward without such extreme stress.
Oh, I think that is life-changing. Yeah. And I think that kind of something I hear inside of that story too. You could come into a windfall, but that doesn't always solve the problem, right? Because this provided enough space, breathing space to help find the solution for yourself, which is really important.
Right. I totally agree. And then we've also had a few moms who are residents, becoming physicians in their residence. And the debt burden for medical school is just outrageous, and residents don't make a lot of money, right? Yeah. And so it's really difficult. And you've probably seen some of these stories that there are a lot of women who have to delay having children just because the work demands they have are so high, or the debt constraints are really high. And so there's like a lot of infertility issues that unfortunately many female doctors or women doctors have to go through. And so we had a few grant recipients who were residents or recently, started practicing. And, for them too, it was just like, for them, two of the women, and then there are videos on our website about them, but their thing was like, yes, obviously the money's helpful, but like someone sees us, right? Like someone sees that this is a horrible problem and it's not fair, right? And so it just made them feel like, it's like kind of a little bit of a mental health boost, like someone cares about us. Yeah.
Being seen, heard, and understood is huge. And then you take it a step further and advocate. So that's a big deal.
It is a big deal. And I'll stop getting off my soapbox here in a little bit, but even I care about childcare in general in the US. It's like total, like it's the worst, right? when I'm not a clinician, and I was just a PR girl back when I had my boys, right? So no one was going to die. I always say, like, no one's going to die if I didn't make it up to my computer before market open to send a press release, right? Like, no one was going to die if my boys were sick or something like that. But like, it's different if you're a clinician. Like, you have, things are more important. It's more important for you to be at work than it is for me. But I remember spending almost all of my take-home pay on daycare for my two boys, right? Like, it sucks. And,
Yeah.
it's an issue that I think a lot of people just brush under the covers, and they just say, oh, well, like, everyone deals with it. It's fine. But it's not fine. It's not fine. It holds a lot of people back. A lot of women drop out of the workforce during that period of their lives, right? Because you're barely covering daycare. Why go to work, be away from your children for however many hours you work a week, and, barely have enough money to do anything else?
Yeah, so it starts to not make any sense. But then, of course, the flip side to that too is if you don't stay in the workforce and then you try to re-enter once your kids are older, then you're dealing with a whole another problem.
Oh, I know.
In addition to the mental health things that you experience. Because I mean, some women, that's exactly what they desire, is to be stay-at-home moms. But not all of us are really cut out for that particular job. You want to have some other part of yourself that you're pouring into, nurturing, growing, that you're contributing to. And so being able to do that is such a huge piece of mental health. And I think full circle on that is what, if that's the person and the type of personality that you are, that's what helps you to show up as the best mom that you possibly can be, which then means we're raising a more well-adjusted, well-loved, well-supported generation.
I agree. I totally 100% am with you on that. I think that what I would like in an ideal world, I would love for women to have the opportunity to do whatever the hell they want to do, right? If you want to be a killer and go work a bajillion hours a week like I did, you should be able to do that, right? If you want to stay home with your kids, you should be able to do that. If you want to work half time, you should be able to do it. And unfortunately, we live in the United States of America. I shouldn't say that because I do love my country, but unfortunately, we live in a country that does not address a lot of the constraints around mothers in the workforce.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. I feel like we could launch a whole tour on that, the permission slip tour.
Oh yeah.
Coming up next.
Yeah.
So inside of all of this, the growth in your life, the growth in your company, the growth in this nonprofit of really making an impact for women in medicine, there had to have been someone along the way that's been a super expander for you, someone who has really shown you that all of this is possible, or really just been a pivotal piece in all this. I'd love if you could share a super expander story for everyone.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone says this, but there are so many people, and it's true. There's so many people, right?
So many.
But I'll say, and I've actually talked about this individual a few, in some interviews I've had over the past few years, how did you become successful? But it's all pretty much true. So there's a woman named Miriam Paramore. She's a total boss. She actually recently retired, but I don't believe her. She was the chief strategy officer of a company in our sector called OptimizeRx. But I met her years and years before when I was kind of I would call myself a cub, right? I was pretty new to the workforce. I'd had a little bit of experience, but I was a new consultant, and she was a big deal at a very large client of mine. And I do not know why, but she was always consistently and very kind to me, and included me in a lot of things that she didn't have to, right? And I did good work. I was competent. I think she liked that. I think she saw that I had a lot of potential, but kind of just adopted me, honestly. And even from a very early part in my career, included me in things that she didn't have to, right? Especially, I was her vendor technically, right? So she even not just exposing me to different people in different situations, being able to watch her, right? Because, I say I work in healthcare, but my niche is even smaller, right? It's healthcare technology, right? It's digital health. So when I talk about it being a whale in a glass of water, it's real. And there weren't and still aren't very many women in leadership positions. And so, you see a lot of, the typical demographic in leadership positions, very often white men who are great, whatever, but I didn't see a lot of people who looked like me. And Miriam was someone who looked like me and was and it was in those positions. And I saw her handle things that are really hard. And now there's a lot of awareness around microaggressions and how women can be marginalized in very subtle ways. There wasn't back then. So things like being cut off in a meeting was very normal, and you almost didn't recognize it, right? It was like, oh, well, that just is something that happens to me. But I remember watching Miriam, I remember watching someone try to cut her off and her just stopping and saying, I'm not finished. And like things like that now seem like, oh, that's what they teach all of us to do. It wasn't something they taught us back then. And being able to see her in hard situations where someone maybe, it's kind of stole her idea, 3 minutes after she said it, but for her to repeat it again in a way that, like gave credit back to her, and watching her always give other women opportunities, I think was definitely kind of absolutely shaped my career and shaped how I want to do good in the world. Right. I mean, I think evidenced by the nonprofit, right. And a lot of the things we do with our consultancy. So she's been incredible. Not only introduced me to a wild pack of women who remain some of my my best buddies, but just kind of being an amazing example, if that makes sense.
I think we all need one of her in our lives.
We all need a Miriam. Everybody does need a Miriam Paramore.
Everybody needs a Miriam.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And you were so fortunate to have her. And then of course, I'm sure all of the people that she introduced you to, it's amazing.
Absolutely.
I'm sure there's like this magnetic thing that happens when someone is that kind of a beacon. The people that they attract into their lives are always just the best people ever.
Yes. And fun, good people too. And I'll say that, even more than introductions and all that, like she was always around and remains always around for me to be like, hey, I'm doing this hard thing that I signed up for. Didn't really think about it before I signed up for it. Like, what do you think? Right. And just always willing to kind of throw down some advice, even if it's not advice, right? Like sometimes she has no idea what I've thrown myself into. Right. And it's more just, let me kind of like, a good friend to walk through, and like someone who you trust to give you honest feedback is awesome.
Best thing ever.
Yeah.
Really, really, truly is. And a strong woman, a strong example. Gosh.
Yeah. Well, and someone too, and I've told this story as well. So she'll probably be annoyed. I continue to tell it, but yeah, someone who can be honest with you and just tell you like, oh, what the hell did you just do? Right. Like what, and then like, and just trusting that person enough to have your best interest at heart, that you're like, you can take that feedback. Miriam, one time, another mutual friend of ours was going through a hard time. And, I was in this corporate bender phase where I was like working nonstop. And I think I was like in like Nevada or something. I don't know. I was doing something ridiculous. And she called to tell me how she put it was, you have food on your face. And I'm telling you, you have food on your face and you can't see it. And I was like, and I think I was actually on like a large packed shuttle bus to the airport, and she's like telling me this, and I'm like embarrassed, right? And she was like, our friend had a hard time and like clearly needed you, and you weren't there, right? And like you look like a fool, basically. And I was like, fuck, right? She was right? She was right, and like, but a gift of someone like that in your life who can tell you when you screwed up is like amazing.
Yes, they can call you out with love, right?
Yeah, it was love. And she didn't do it. I mean, I was on a crowded shuttle bus, but she had no idea. She wasn't being an asshole to me. She wasn't calling me out in front of a bunch of people. She was just like, hey, I'm calling you to tell you that like you could have been a better person there. And I would like you to be a better person in the future. Yeah, it's awesome.
Feel that.
Yeah. But yeah, there's so many people though, that I think if you, and again, I don't want to say it's like, tit for tat or quid pro quo or anything like that. But I think if you help people out, like people do help you out, right? I've had so many amazing people who have introduced me to the right people or kind of believed in me. And I mean, the person who introduced me to Ryan as an example, like totally a super expander. And sometimes I'm like, do I even deserve all of this person has done for me, right? And Ryan's a super expander, right? She introduced me to you. I mean, it's just cool kind of being on that journey and seeing where things take you or where people take you.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And I think you nailed it there when you show up and you give
Yeah.
without agenda, That's the
Yeah.
kind of thing that really truly does actually happen. People are good people. People like to help other people. And when you show up and give from the bottom of your heart with goodness, people rise to the occasion and give back. They want to give back.
They do want to give back. Yeah. And I want, like, when someone does something amazing for me, or even just like, we really enjoyed hanging out with each other or something like that. Like, I want to help them too. So it is
Yeah,
amazing kind of where just being a good human can take you. It's kind of mind blowing sometimes.
it is. I feel like this whole entire podcast is literally just solving the problems of the world. Who
I
knew?
know.
Just get the two of us together for a conversation
It
and
is
here we
hard
go.
because I've talked to a few people like that. I've said to a number of people, like, I feel like the more I give, the more I get, which sounds shitty, right? It sounds like I'm doing it just to get something, but whether it's helping someone out, like writing someone a reference letter, or being a reference, introducing people, giving away money to a bunch of moms, right? I feel like the more good stuff that I do, like the more it opens up my world. And I can't say it gives me more money, right? But it makes my world bigger, which is cool. And if you're an aggressive capitalist, like I may or may not be, you can turn opportunities into very profitable endeavors, right? Or you can just have a fulfilled life and enjoy meeting all those interesting humans. So
Yeah, but the secret there, I think you just noticed that when you give not to get, like you do
yeah,
get, and that just happens, it's a
yeah.
byproduct, but when you give with the agenda to get, then it doesn't always work. It doesn't work out that way specifically.
Yeah, in fact, like there have been a few times where, in consulting, where I have been in situations where I'm like, hey, I did like this person a huge favor, multiple times, and they're just like not like, I was assuming that it was going to come back to me in some sort of like contract type of way, and it didn't. But what sucks about like the first couple times I had that experience, like when you were expecting something, is like looking back, I know that if I had just been cool and waited for a year or so, like it actually would have turned into something. But because I was a shit about it, it didn't. Right. So I agree with you on that for sure. You have to give, and just give to be a good human.
Yeah, and release. Yeah. So much gold in all the things that you're saying.
I hope so.
So
You could just be saying that, but yeah.
no, I'm not. Receive that. Receive that.
Yeah.
So in all the things that you're doing, these big achievements, this big life that you're creating, there has to be something, a feeling that you're reaching for on a daily basis. Because I kind of it goes hand in hand with the idea of when we give without the agenda to get, when we're reaching for something, when it's rooted in things, oftentimes it's just not enough. It's a feeling that we need to be reaching for. So what is your North Star?
My North Star, this might sound like a little hokey, but I mean, I'm kind of into that stuff. So right, like kind of before I started, I started a family. I remember thinking like, I went through, I guess it was a quarter life crisis. I don't really know. I guess it depends on how long people live these days. But I was thinking like, what really matters here? Like, what do I like when I die? What do I want to say happened? Right? And then maybe this is getting like a little too weird. I don't know. But I decided there were probably only a few things that really mattered, right? You could say like having children, bringing good people in the world matters, right? But I think there's a lot that the humans can do to leave a mark on the world. And kind of where like my kind of like my positioning statement, my personal positioning statement is, like I was talking about before, when you're looking at a big problem, it's really hard to take it on. But if you can split it up, right? If you can take on little things, like you can break down a big problem. And so the area that I'm best positioned to be really helpful in, and is an area I believe in, is I'm really great at digital health, at healthcare tech, right? At like making that part of our country and of our world like a really effective thing. And so and there's a lot that goes to that, right? Like, how do I make an impact there? So listen, I'm not a technologist. Like, I'm not going to go write some fucking code that's amazing and like blow everyone's minds out. Like, it's not going to happen. But what I can do is I can make sure that there are more women in leadership positions, so that we have broader opinion sets, that we truly do have the best people to solve those big problems. And they might not be white men whose wives can stay at home, right? It might be me, it might be you, it might be someone who's just graduating, who is going to end up having a big old family and wants to keep working. So I can position more women for those positions and more good people for those positions. I also, through a lot of the consulting work I do, I can get the right programs in place to make a difference there. Like I can make this country's healthcare system work better in my own way. So I'd say like my big feeling, because I have a lot of big feelings. So my biggest feeling is I want to be able to look back and say, I did more than profit off of this industry. I want to be able to say like Kat McDavitt made that better. And here's how she did it.
Yeah, chills.
Yeah. Well, well, when you're thinking about healthcare technology, how could you not get the chills? I don't know, right?
Oh my gosh. Well on your way. You're doing it. So, so good.
I mean, this whole thing could fail, right? I mean, again, I've thought of the 3,000 ways in which my nonprofit may fail. And my consulting business and everything else.
How do you have time to, when we're thinking, you're thinking about the ways that it could possibly fail, how do you find the time to execute all the strategies that make it succeed?
I don't really know. I don't know. I think I sleep less than most people probably.
I think big achievers, high performers, I always say this, you guys are all made of something a little different.
Yeah. Well, I do have a lot of energy. I have more energy than most people, and I don't really know why. But it does seem to be that way.
You're a lucky woman.
Maybe, I don't know. Like I said, there isn't a lot of sleep.
So for all of the people listening that have their big ideas, their big goals turning in their mind, what would be any sort of like a juicy nugget of advice? I mean, this whole entire podcast is like, you should probably listen to it 15 times if this is you trying to create something big, but if you could condense it into like, I don't know, the golden nugget, what would it be?
I have one piece of advice for people kind of taking this stuff on. My gosh, there's so many nuggets. I'm trying to like, okay. I think because I'm trying to think of like what I would tell myself. I think I would tell myself, you can actually do everything you want to do. And you can figure it out.
That's the mantra you also have to repeat to yourself every time you start to think about that failure.
I know, yeah, I'm like coaching myself. I mean, the second piece could be looking back as a bad habit, right? Anyway, like, hey, just keep moving forward. I actually think there's a lot of like, I mean, that's an adorable, funny thing that my dad tells me, but and I do respond well to that kind of feedback. But I actually think there's a lot of good that can come from like examining your mistakes and like kind of not obsessing over things that went wrong, but like really saying like, okay, this is where I misstepped. Yeah.
That's where you get to refine, edit, and move forward.
Right? Yeah, I did crash. So last time you told me that is I crashed my husband's Land Rover, which was a major bummer, and you're like going through everything you did when you had the accident, right? And so a situation like that, yeah, like looking back's a bad idea. Just move forward, get the thing done. Yeah. Like everything was fine. You still don't have your Land Rover back from the shop, but hey, they didn't total it, so that was cool. But but I do think, especially in a business like I'm in, it's a relationship business. Like you have to look at where you screwed up. But
of course, yeah, we have to be able to do that and honor it and take responsibility and switch and do all the things.
yeah, but I would say you can do everything you want to do. Because back to my inferiority complex and all those things, like. And I think a lot of people, it doesn't matter what gender you are either. Like you're starting out and, there's a lot you don't know. You can figure it out.
Absolutely. It's all figure outable. I think that was Marie Forleo's line, right?
You can figure it out.
It's all figure outable. Okay. So for everyone listening who is now super inspired and they want to donate to your nonprofit to help the moms in medicine, what's the best way for them to find you?
Yeah, so the easiest place to learn about the fund and donate money is mothersinmedicine.org. Yep, amazing. And it's listen, I have made the ability to give us money so seamless. It's all kinds of buttons you can click there to make it happen. But yeah, you can hear some of the stories about the mothers who did receive grants. You can kind of just see some of the issues with the industry that we're trying to address. But yeah, mothersinmedicine.org.
Absolutely. And of course, that'll be in the show notes for everyone to find so that they can reach out and support this very worthy cause.
Thank you.
I appreciate you being here today, for sharing this conversation, for sharing all of your wisdom and of course, all the laughs.
Yeah. So my mom has told me before on podcasts that I laugh too much. So back to women that'll give you feedback. I laugh all the time. It's terrible. Well, I don't know.
Laughing is infectious. And I think that it makes other people, it makes them laugh. It brightens your day. It feels good. Burns extra calories. I mean, come on, we're doing a lot of good things here during this podcast.
Shit. All right. That's good. That's good. I'll keep doing it then.
Goodness, I thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. You're a busy woman. So I just am so grateful that we were able to do this.
Thank you. You know how hard it is to not ask you questions back? Like, who was your super expander?
Maybe we'll have to make an episode one time where it's like,
yeah, I can interview you. I can interview you. Listen, it'll be great. It'll be great. There'll probably be more curse words, but it's going to be fantastic.
Oh, I can bring them. It'll be kind of like the powder puff game, or right? Isn't that what it was? Was in high school? Did you ever do that where you went and it was like the football players played the cheerleaders or something, or like I was in a very rural community, so I think our field hockey team. I don't remember if we had like real cheerleaders or anything, but yeah, they went in and they played football. Though they were pretty tough. So yeah, we get to flip the script, right?
There wasn't a lot of powder puffing going on there. There was a lot of bruises, but.
Well, thank you so much. Very much appreciate you guys. Check out the show notes so that you can hop on over and contribute to Moms in Medicine. And I will catch you on the next episode.
Thank you, Corey.